you with note cards, if you've written anything down or if you're thinking of something, feel free to write something down. Some of the staff members, thank you, are already gathering some of those. Just pass them in the aisles. And staff members, if you could bring those down, we'll start asking some questions. We love you.
Hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/serve2unite and facebook.com/mylifeafterhate. That's the way to find either of us on Facebook, and we'd love to keep in touch.
Alright, the first question I have for you, Arno. Did you join the group to act violent?
No, I was already pretty violent when I came across the group. It was really long before I became a skinhead. I had convinced myself that violence was who I should be about. If we look at the society we live in, it's a very militaristic society where enforcing things and using force to make a point is looked upon as an honorable way to live. Now, especially amongst European society, that's been magnified even. So my heritage is one of people being violent and taking things by force and enforcing conditions and taking land and rape and pillage. It's a pretty ugly history that I come from, and I had kind of just fell into that in response to my dissatisfaction with my home life as a kid. So like I said, from a very early age, I was violent on the school bus. By the time I met my first skinhead, I was already getting in fights left and right. So to me, the whole skinhead thing, I'm like, awesome. This is the best way to be violent and hurtful I found yet. So that's kind of how that happened.
One of the things that Arno said to me when we initially met was, and I asked him that question too, I said, you know, why did you get into it? He said, honestly, it was something that I was good at. And I hadn't been good at anything before. So I was good at fighting. I was good at hating people. And it became something that you practice more and more. I mean, you are what you practice, right? We got football players in here, we got basketball players in here. I'm sure we got baseball players. I'm sure we got people that practice musical instruments. The more you do something, the better you get at doing it. That's something that he got good at. Next question. Do you think you still would have changed your life if it wasn't for your daughter?
No, my daughter really kind of sealed the deal. If it wasn't for my daughter, I don't think I'd be here talking to you. I would likely be better in prison. And the very, very scary thing about that is like I could have taken out innocent people on the way, just as Wade Page did. So my daughter was absolutely crucial to my turnaround. However, it wasn't just my daughter. It was the whole kind of system falling into place, this whole element of planets aligning. It was my daughter, very much so, but it was also my parents, who, as horrible as I got. And to give you an idea of how horrible I was, like I would show up at Thanksgiving dinner drunk out of my mind and being like, you know what you should be thankful for? You should be thankful for being white. And I'd start rambling on about white power, and it was at Thanksgiving dinner. There he goes again. You know, I was not a good son. I disappeared for months at a time. I put my parents through hell, and now I understand that my daughter just turned 20 actually. She went through her teenage years. But my parents' love for me and their refusal to give up on me was absolutely crucial. But those two things by themselves, I think, you know, it's still a may or may not have. It was really these acts of kindness by strangers that set the stage for all of that. Because these acts of kindness made it more difficult for me to keep hating people. So without that, you know, it was very much a perfect storm of good fortune in my case that led me to make that positive change in my life.
I think what we call it like the 3 F's: family, friends, and faith. Faith can be as simple as basically you just want to do something good, and you think that that good karma will come around in the system or whatever religion you might want to practice. Family, Ms. Rodney knows my family pretty well. And a family, once you become a father, and once you have kids, and once you become a husband, it makes you walk the straight and narrow a little quicker than you would have before. And daughters have a special place in my heart because once I had my first daughter, I had to change my lifestyle from going out to the bars, from, you know, whatever attitude you had before. The consequences got a little bit more serious. I wanted to be there for her, you know, as a role model. So I want to let you guys know, all the girls out there, you know, you guys are all beautiful. All you guys out there, you're all great. All right. You are all great the way you are. All right. No change for nobody. You're awesome. That's up my son. All right. Enough love. All right. How are you now looking at black people or people with another color?
That's a great question, and I'm really glad that it was asked because every time I do a talk like this, I'll make a big list of stuff. Make sure you talk about this. Make sure you talk about this. And then they say, no, this is a goal way to become a lot of time. That's an excellent question because I deprived myself from contact with everyone who wasn't a racist white person. Not just people who weren't white. People, you had to be a white racist to get the time of day for me for 7 years of my life. Also during those 7 years, I couldn't watch the Packers. At least not with my skinhead buddies knowing about it. I would sneak into my apartment. Yeah, I can't be there Sunday. Yeah, do something. I'd go lock myself in the house, turn on the Packer game very quietly, so none of my skinhead friends would find out. Why do you think a skinhead couldn't root for the Packers? Right. Yeah, that's not on their approved list of things to do as a white collar person. Back in the early '90s is when Seinfeld came out. It was huge. They called it water cooler shows. Everybody talked about Seinfeld at the water cooler at work. My girlfriend and I, before we broke up, we loved Seinfeld. And she worked at night, so she wanted me to tape it for her. But I couldn't put it on the videotape that said Seinfeld, because my skinhead buddies would come over and be like, "What's this? Seinfeld's a Jew. You can't have that." So we put it on one that said Amber's second birthday party. We do no other like asked to see that thing. When I got out of that, it was a feeling of relief and a feeling of joy to the point where I'm like, I can watch anything I want to watch now. I can listen to whatever I want to listen to. And most importantly, I can hang out with whoever I want to hang out with. And today, I am so fortunate to have this amazing spectrum of friends who have skin colors of every shade you could possibly imagine. I have gay friends, lesbian friends, transgendered friends, Jewish friends, Sikh friends, and all of them have enriched my life in ways that I'm grateful for every day. So another question I get along that line sometimes is, are you ever going to be a racist again? Do you ever think do you ever have racist feelings again? And the answer is, well, no, because being racist sucks. It sucks. It's a miserable way to live. And once you live the other way, where you really experience what all this world has to offer, you don't want to go back there. So today I make a point of hanging out with people and trying to meet people who are different than I have been. It's something that I'm really passionate about. It's so I'm grateful.
Pardeep, before you get started on that one, we have a couple questions for you from the audience. The first question is, what were your feelings before you met Arnold? And the second question with that is, what do or what did many of your family or friends, relatives from the Sikh temple think about you co-oping with somebody like Arno?
Okay, that's a good question. When I first met Arno, it was at a restaurant on the east side of Milwaukee. And I remember sitting outside the restaurant, and a Vietnamese restaurant, and I'm like, weird choice of restaurant. And I saw him, and I knew how he looked because of his life after hate and Facebook and everything like that. And I remember feeling a little bit nervous. I'm like, man, I don't get butterflies like this. You know, and it wasn't like butterflies of, it was weird thing, you know, I was like, okay, I'm gonna meet this guy that practiced this kind of violence, this kind of hatred, and this was the perception that he had about, you know, people of my color. And I'm about to go meet him and introduce him, or introduce myself to him. So at first I was nervous, and that's a natural, you're gonna be nervous. Things that you're gonna have to fight that nervousness sometimes. As far as the second part of that question, there are people in my life and in our community that kind of see Arno as still a skinhead, as still a neo-Nazi. And I remember talking to some of my family in Racine. Went out to Racine and I told them, I said, you know, me and Arno are going to be working together, and explained to them who Arno is, what he represented. And they said something like, oh man, always, you know, once a skinhead, always a skinhead. Once that way, always that way. I was like, really? Okay. And these were, you know, the same people that, you know, my family is no different than a lot of other families. My family, you know, they'll brand their guns out, they'll bring the rifles out in the middle of the living room floor, showing you like, well, these are the new rifles, these are the new guns we got. And they had the same perceptions about, you know, that once you're some way, you can never change. So some of them are still uncomfortable, some of them still don't believe in Arno. But to them, I think Arno, for me, represents what is great about this country. What is great about what people can do. And, you know, like Obama ran on the whole concept of change. And what year was that? 2008. He ran on the concept of change. Well, here's a man sitting in front of you that doesn't run on a concept, that doesn't preach something, he actually lives it. So to me, Arno is, personally, he's a hero.
I'm very humble. To me, Pardeep is a hero. And for, I had the same kind of butterflies going through before we first met. It's a bromance for the ages. But
We can start singing soon if you want.
last week, on November 21st, Surf Unite celebrated the first Heritage Day, which is a day throughout schools throughout the country where students come in and talk about who they are, who their ancestors were, and talk about their culture, and they share it with other students, and we find ways that we're alike, and we find ways to embrace each other's differences. There was a big Heritage Day celebration at the Sikh temple that night. I didn't even know it was a big deal either. I had nothing planned, and Pardeep's like, hey, yeah, you should come by on Wednesday. Okay. I show up there, and there's like hundreds of people and media, and he's like, hey, you're speaking. Oh, all right. So I went up, and I was incredibly honored to be able to be a part of that historic celebration. But the whole time, I'm like, I'm going to start bawling. I'm just going to be a bawling mess the whole time. I don't even know how I'm going to do this. And I managed to make it through the first couple minutes without crying, but at the end of it, I really started breaking up because I was so humbled by the acceptance that Pardeep and his brother Armadeep would give me, and our friend Raul, and so many other people from his community who accepted me really when I had shown them that I deserved to be accepted. That's what's most beautiful about it, is this accepting by default rather than making it conditional.
You guys, obviously you guys know the shooter's name, right? Wade Page. What happened to me right after this happened was I started to get into this like pissed off mode. And my brother comes up to me and he's like, and I wouldn't even refer to this guy as his name. I would literally refer to him as like that dude, the shooter or whatever, and the media would like say his name. I'd be like, do me a favor, don't say his name. And so I was that upset. But then my brother comes up to me, he's like, hey, so Thursday we're gonna have the ceremony at Oak Creek High School. As we had this ceremony, I realized that's gonna be like 4,000, 5,000 people seeing it as like, well, we're gonna broadcast this thing, that thing. So we had at that time, he comes up to me, he's like, why don't we put his casket next to all the victims? I looked at him, I'm like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, you're gonna put his casket next to the people that he shot. And I'm like, you know what kind of like, you know, what that would have done to like people that were sympathetic? And I understood where he was going with it, that we had to respond to this with a choice. We had a choice at the time. We could have sent a message. And one of my biggest regrets now is that we didn't put that casket there. And I refer to Wade Page by his name. And instead of feeling angry at him, I feel sad for him. I feel sympathetic towards him. Hatred is an unnatural feeling. It is something that Arno will explain over and over again, that you almost have to fuel. And that fuel usually comes in the form of alcohol, drugs, something. Alright? So if you see somebody practicing hate, they're being fueled by something unnatural. It's more natural to love. As corny as it sounds. It's easier to smile than frown. So after a while, you know, your feelings just change.
We have one more question from the crowd, and that is, we talked a lot, Pardeep, Arnold and I talked a lot about the power of words before they gave their presentation. Could one of you or both of you just briefly comment on what that concept means to you, how powerful words can be?
I gotta think.
I got some words, all right. Words carry an immense amount of weight because it comes from our subconscious. It's a manifestation of our thoughts. Before a word is spoken, it's a feeling in our brains that has everything to do with who we are as a person. And it's important to take responsibility for the words that you put out into the world around you. Because those words have an effect on other people. Pardeep and I today were talking about meditation. I meditate regularly. It's something that's really helped me in my healing and inner peace process. And when I meditate, I just calm myself. I still my body, I focus on my breath. And thoughts will pop up, and then I bring my focus back to my breath. I don't judge those thoughts. I don't say whether they're bad or good. And I don't get mad at them popping up because I know that's what my brain does, it thinks. But those thoughts are words. And I'm trying to focus on my breath. And we're talking about this process of meditation, and we're getting all like crazy, like, whoa, dude, do you know how many air molecules are in each breath we take? Well, in an adult lung, varying from men to women, our lung volume is measured in cubic liters. You get all the science chemistry people out here right now. We're going to talk some science and chemistry. In a cubic liter of air, there are 10 to the 22nd power amount of molecules. Math like frightens and confuses me, but that's all. Like trillions upon trillions times trillions of molecules in each breath that we take. So every breath from our first to our last is unique. We will never have the same breath twice. Even if we were in a sterile laboratory environment, there would be differences of millions of molecules in these breaths. What does it have to do with words? Well, our breaths are also affected by our body chemistry. If you guys see a movie and it's a terrifying movie, and you're like, oh my God! It affects your breath. If you're in love with someone and you see that person, that affects your breath.
Yeah, a lot of people love to hear.
And if somebody comes up to you and goes, "Hey!" that affects your breath too. It affects the way that you are living in that moment. So the words that we put out in the world around us and the words we express around other people are affecting how they breathe, how they live, and it has repercussions. So we can take responsibility for those words and be mindful to use words and to do actions that are beneficial, that are an asset to the world around us, like being kind to other people, like seeing someone who's sitting by themselves at lunch and saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you all right today? I like eating that too. See that Packer game last night?" Those are some very innocuous words, but those words have the power to change someone's life.
So they have this old saying, and some old sayings are true, some old sayings are not. Sticks and stones will break your bones, words will never hurt you. That's wrong. Alright, that was one of the old sayings that they were trying to make somebody feel better, but wasn't really true. Words can hurt more than physical harm. I'm a teacher. I teach at Haeger School on 24th and Burlock. Before that, I was a cop on the same neighborhood on the north side of Milwaukee. So before we get into like class, I start to ask my students. I said, which one of you are perfect? Raise your hand in here if somebody's perfect. Any volunteers for perfect person? You are perfect?
All right.
Now, I'm not going to do it with you, but what I would do as a teacher, I'm like, you can basically, if you want to, you can find any imperfection about any person. I think I'm perfect too, but that's only in my own mind. You can find out an imperfection about anybody and basically ridicule them to the point that, to a point that they basically have self-esteem issues. That's why I told you guys all before. I said, and I really did mean it, that everybody's beautiful in this room. And you don't need to change for nobody else. Words hurt. Before you say anything to anybody, you need to basically understand that. And you'll understand that, like, even words on Facebook, words on Twitter, those words hurt. The other day I sent out an email, and I wanted to hurt somebody the other day because I'm in a committee at the temple, and I was behind my computer, and I thought that I can just really get out my words, because on a computer you can say whatever you want without somebody combating you, right? You can get that whole email done. And so I wrote an email, and it was my mistake, and I had to apologize for it later. So I make mistakes, but I compare people that have like those thoughts that we were talking about earlier, that didn't support me and Arno's mission at the temple. I compared them to the Nazis. I compared them to Haeger. And basically, these are people that have been sympathetic in my own temple. That basically I called them and told them that they're the guy that basically did all this horrible stuff. I had to answer for that later. But before you send anything out, via Facebook, email, Twitter, anything like that, before you say something to somebody else, that you're going to be like, well, I can mess with him because, you know what, his hair is blah, blah, blah. You know what, I can talk about his mama. I know something deep down about, they're unhappy about pimples that they're having, or, they got weight issues. Whatever it is, words hurt. Before you say something, think. I can go first on this one. Do your t-shirts have special meanings? Mine says Saved Souls on it, and I guess to me it's kind of a special shirt. I've had this shirt for 10 years. the past 10 years of my life, whether I was a cop or a teacher, this has been my basic mission, is that, basically save souls. That simple.
My church is Southern California Crossroads. As Pardeep had mentioned earlier, both of us are part of an organization called Against Violent Extremism. And it is a collection of formers, like myself, former violent extremists, and survivors, like Pardeep, people who have survived violent extremism from all over the world, who network together and we work together, exchange ideas, we collaborate on ways to make the world around us a more peaceful place. And one organization that I'm very honored to know through Against Violent Extremism is Southern California Crossroads, which is a gang intervention and prevention outreach program in Los Angeles, California. The group was founded by a friend of mine named Paul Carrillo. He was a very violent gang member in LA for many years. He came to his senses after one too many of his friends were murdered, and he made up his mind to try to do something to help kids get out of gangs and or stay out of gangs, and that's what Southern California Crossroads does. This past May, they invited me to Los Angeles to speak at a gang violence intervention prevention conference, and Paul gave me a whole ton of shirts. So I love what his group does. I'm honored to know them, and I wear this one quite often when I'm speaking.
I think we owe these two gentlemen a huge round of applause. There's just a couple things I want to mention to all of you, okay? First of all, Arno and Pardeep are pretty much spending the rest of the day into the evening here at CHS. Staff members, remember that if you would like to talk with either one of these two gentlemen after school, starting about 3:30 in the LGI, the forum is wide open. They did mention that they were going to talk a little bit about some of the topics and how they specifically relate to classrooms. That you are more than welcome to do that, and that these two guys will stay here for as long as you would like. This evening, everybody, remember this and mention this to your parents. They've seen messages on Skyward, got emails, they've received emails. But tonight at 6 o'clock, these two guys are going to be here specifically to talk with your parents, your guardians, about the same types of things they mentioned today. The response has been pretty good, so if you go home today and you see your parents and they wondered about this presentation today, tell them, remind them that at 6 o'clock tonight in the LGI we'll have a parent presentation as well, okay? One more time, a round of applause for our team. Orderly fashion, you are dismissed from